My name is Stan Love. I'm a NASA astronaut. Currently, my jobs at NASA involve being the spacecraft communicator for the upcoming Artemis II flight. I've also been deeply involved with the Gateway program since its beginning, and currently am in charge of the team designing the user interface for Gateway. And also I'm sort of the crew member assigned to follow Gateway issues and be available to the developers to answer questions relevant to the crew for the Gateway. In addition to flying in space on STS-122 in 2008 on the orbiter Atlantis, we delivered the Columbus laboratory module for ESA to the International Space Station. I've also done a couple of field seasons in Antarctica and piloted submersibles in Canadian lakes and in the Florida Keys. I'm here as part of my Gateway duties. Occasionally we go out and visit the suppliers of equipment that are going to be part of the Gateway to meet people who are basically our team members and give them a picture of what it is that they're actually a part of. It's common for the manufacturers of parts to not realize the amazing uses to which some of what they make are put. I see a lot of competence and enthusiasm. I see a diverse team. I like to see a large range of ages, and I see that here. So you have the experienced, but maybe not as open to new ideas, and then a lot of youngsters who may not be aware of limitations, but have a lot of good ideas. So it looks like a very capable team. It's not my first time visiting. Our family lived in Germany for a year in 1979 when I was 13 years old. And we took a side trip to Vienna, but I remember very little of that trip. The town so far has been overwhelmingly beautiful, and the food is great. It's hard to describe in words. Spacewalking is very difficult. The suit is pressurized, the outside is not. So every time you move, you're fighting against the pressure of the suit. You're in a dangerous environment in an area that has little room for error. And things always go wrong on spacewalks. And part of the mental challenge is being able to work around the difficulties. All that put together, and then most of the time you're looking at your work, so you don't have a sense of being in space. But every once in a while you can lift your head up and move your eyes and say, oh my goodness, there's the Earth going by, and that's an amazing feeling. Preparing for space travel is practice, 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 and do that practice in an environment that's as realistic as we can reasonably make on Earth. So we practice for spacewalks in a giant swimming pool with a full-scale model of the space station in there, so that when you're out on the real space station, it looks familiar. We practice for launch and landing in a rocket using a simulator with a cockpit that looks just like the real thing. And you get so used to those environments that when it's the real day and there's the noise and vibration of launch, or the sensations of being actually out in space with a black sky and no reassuring swimming pool floor beneath you, you're in such a familiar environment that you can get your job done. As for what has changed, we have a successful formula for preparing crew members for flight, which involves all that practice and simulation, and I don't think we'll ever change it. We know it works. Technical work is the second most important thing we do as astronauts, and that is the chief focus of our training. Learning how to operate the machine, learning how to respond to malfunctions. The most important skill, though, is teamwork. Everything we do as a group, either with another astronaut or as a group of astronauts, or as an astronaut working with mission control, or even working with the wider teams of engineers who make the whole architecture work, and then the suppliers who bring the materials that we use to do our space missions. So teamwork first, but then everything else is technical. I don't think so, but I think the nature of the technical work is going to change. Right now, well, let's see, on the space shuttle, if you wanted to make a change in the system, you would flip a switch which would supply electrical power to a component. On the Gateway or Orion, you will send a command to the system, which will then activate a remote power controller, which will then give power to the component. In the future, on the gateway, that command may be sent by an automated agent. So the human's role is going to be more supervisory than direct actuation, but they'll still have to understand everything that the automation is doing so that they can monitor it, make sure it's happening correctly, and then intervene if that is necessary. The Gateway program was designed initially as a way to preserve the very successful international collaboration that we have with the International Space Station after the space station is gone. Spacecraft don't last forever. We expect to operate the space station now certainly through 2028, probably through 2030. But after that, as components get old, we can no longer repair them, and someday the station will end. But we don't want our partnership with our international partners to end. So the Gateway is a way of preserving that. Technically, the Gateway serves as a transportation hub servicing the moon so that we can bring together crews and landers and cargoes and move things around among vehicles, refuel vehicles, and have a permanent station in orbit around the moon to accomplish that function. My role in Gateway has been many over the years. I was a member of the very first study team that came up with the Gateway concept 10 years ago. So I'm proud to have served on that team, and actually it's personally fulfilling for me to now see what was a short PowerPoint presentation actually taking shape in factories around the world as we prepare the modules and the launch vehicles and start fleshing out the real physical self of the Gateway. My role now is, again, as sort of the crew representative for Gateway, and then also as the lead of the team that's designing the crew interface for the Gateway. One purpose of the Gateway is also to serve as a test bed for the extensive automation that we'll need when someday we go to Mars. Right now, even on the moon or Gateway, mission control is just a couple of seconds away for a radio call, and we have access to all those smart engineers down in mission control whenever we have a problem. But on Mars, with the radio link taking perhaps 20 minutes to get a message to Earth, 20 minutes to get an answer back, more of the function of mission control is going to have to be on board the ship. And we can't fly a 30-person flight control team. We only have a small team. And so that means that since we can't put all that information into the limited brains of the crew, the vehicle itself and its automation are going to have to pick up much of the role that mission control serves now. This is a big job, and it's a lot to bite off. So we're going to start with the Gateway, which is in a safe orbit and a stable orbit where nothing is going to happen very fast. And we'll practice developing the automation we need for Mars in this nearby and relatively safe environment. That is a fairly well-kept secret. That is what NASA is for. It's not for flying people in space. NASA was designed to make new technologies, do the research, do the exploration in order to hand it off to industry. To make space part of the global economy, we shouldn't have just governments operating there. We should unleash the power of capitalism and corporate energy to make the true economy in low Earth orbit. In my opinion, we've spent too long just staying where we are in low Earth orbit, and it's past time that we hand it off. Now that we can readily access and return from low Earth orbit, it's high time we pass that on to industry and let the national agencies go out to take the next step out to the moon, do the exploration there, and then one day we'll hand that off to industry. It will be more challenging because there's not a crew there all the time. Sometimes on ISS, a payload that is supposed to be automated doesn't work, but then we have a crew there. We can send them a procedure and the crew can fix the problem. On Gateway, that will be more difficult. So experiments will have to be designed for even less human interaction and even more reliability when there's nobody there to tend them. But again, as we go further into space, these are useful skills to develop. We already have to do that with our robotic spacecraft that go exploring the solar system. So any practice that we can get in designing these robust autonomous systems will serve us well as we go further into space.